The twin suns were setting over the red deserts of Varen Prime when Commander Ethan Ward received the strangest message of his career. It came through the encrypted Galactic Command Channel, a direct communication from Emperor Kadar of the Xynar Dominion, one of the most feared alien empires in the galaxy. Ethan stood at the edge of his base's landing pad, the wind carrying fine red dust across the metal floor. The message played in his ear again, and he still couldn't believe it. "Commander Ward," the deep alien voice said, "you are known across the systems for training warriors who never fail. I am sending you my daughters, 5 of them. Train them. Make them strong. Make them worthy of their bloodline." The message ended abruptly, leaving Ethan staring into the horizon. The daughters of Emperor Kadar. Everyone in the galaxy knew of them, legends wrapped in mystery. They were said to be beautiful, dangerous, and utterly untamed. Ethan sighed. "This is either the greatest honor or the biggest mistake of my life," he muttered. By dawn, the Emperor's shuttle arrived, a sleek, black craft that shimmered under the rising light. When the ramp opened, Ethan expected soldiers or attendants first. Instead, 5 tall alien women stepped out in perfect formation. They were unlike any warriors Ethan had ever seen. Their skin had faint metallic tones, gold, emerald, silver, bronze, and violet, each reflecting the light differently. Their eyes glowed softly, showing intelligence and confidence. They wore ceremonial armor, each piece elegant and powerful. The eldest stepped forward, her green-gold armor gleaming. "I am Princess Valara," she said, her tone cold but regal. "My father says you will make us strong." Ethan straightened. "That's the plan. But strength doesn't come from bloodlines. It comes from discipline." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Then we shall see if your human discipline can match our Xynar spirit." From that moment, Ethan knew this would not be a normal mission. Training began the next morning. Ethan had trained soldiers, pilots, and even AI combat drones, but never royalty, and definitely not alien princesses with tempers sharper than their blades. He divided them into 2 groups, physical combat and mental resilience. The first few days were chaos. Princess Saris, the youngest with violet skin, refused to follow orders. She preferred to fight using energy bursts, flashy but uncontrolled. Princess Dara, with bronze skin and amber eyes, mocked the drills, calling them primitive human routines. Even Valara, the eldest, questioned everything he said, testing his patience with icy stares. Ethan didn't yell. He didn't argue. He simply worked harder, showing them through action rather than words. He fought them one-on-one in combat drills. He showed how balance and focus could overpower brute strength. By the end of the first week, the princesses were exhausted, angry, but curious. That night, they watched Ethan from a distance as he repaired one of the old training mechs alone, covered in sweat and dust. He wasn't noble-born. He wasn't gifted. Yet he never gave up. "Humans are strange," Dara whispered. Valara nodded slightly. "Strange but strong." Weeks passed. The training became tougher. They learned human combat tactics, teamwork, and mental focus. Ethan introduced them to simulations where they had to defend civilians, make hard choices, and lead under pressure. Slowly, their arrogance faded. They stopped competing with each other and started fighting as one. Then came the day that changed everything. A sudden explosion rocked the base during a night drill. Ethan and the princesses ran to the control room. Alarms were blaring. The sensors showed an unknown ship entering Varen Prime's orbit. It wasn't from the Emperor. It wasn't from the Dominion. "Pirates," Ethan said, scanning the data. "They've tracked your ship. They're after you." Valara's eyes flared with anger. "Then we fight." Ethan smiled slightly. "Finally something we agree on." The attack came fast, plasma fire lighting the desert sky. Ethan and the princesses fought side by side for the first time. Their teamwork was messy but fierce. Saris used her energy blast to disarm enemies. Dara crushed enemy drones with raw strength. Ethan covered them with precise rifle fire, calling out orders with calm confidence. When the dust cleared, the base was damaged but still standing. Valara approached Ethan, her armor scorched. "You risked your life for us," she said softly. He shrugged. "That's what teammates do." For the first time, she smiled, a small, genuine smile. "Perhaps you're not as primitive as I thought." Ethan laughed quietly. "And you're not as impossible as I feared." As dawn broke over the desert, the 5 princesses stood beside their human commander, their eyes glowing with new understanding. They had come as royal daughters, proud and untouchable. But now, something had begun to change. They were becoming warriors. And deep in the shadows of space, someone else was watching, someone who did not want these princesses to survive their training. The next morning, Varen Prime's twin suns rose over a base that looked like it had survived a war. Smoke rose from the training yard, and the once smooth walls were now scarred with plasma burns. Commander Ethan Ward stood at the edge of the platform, watching the horizon. He hadn't slept all night. His mind kept replaying the attack, the way the pirate had found them, the precision of their strike, and the strange symbol painted on one of their ships. It wasn't random. Someone had sent them. Behind him, footsteps echoed. It was Princess Valara, her green-gold armor repaired but her expression tense. "The others are awake," she said. "They want to know what happens next." Ethan turned to her. "Next, we find out who tried to kill you." Her eyes flashed. "You think they were after us?" "I know it," Ethan said. "No one attacks a neutral human base on accident, not one this remote. Someone tracked your father's shuttle when you came here." Valara's jaw tightened. "Then it could be someone inside the Dominion. Or someone who wants to see your empire fall," Ethan replied. "Either way, we'll find them." Inside the command center, the 5 princesses gathered around the holographic map. Each looked determined but restless. The adrenaline of battle had replaced their earlier arrogance. Ceres, the youngest, leaned forward. "Can't we just call Father? He'll destroy whoever did this." Ethan shook his head. "If the Emperor gets involved too early, your enemies will know you're still alive. We use that advantage. They think the attack succeeded. We stay quiet, we dig, and we strike back when we know who's behind it." Princess Dara crossed her arms, her bronze skin reflecting the light. "You sound like a soldier who's seen too much war." Ethan gave a half smile. "Maybe I have. And I've learned one thing. The loudest army isn't always the one that wins." The princesses exchanged glances. Even Valara seemed to nod in quiet agreement. For the next few days, they worked together to rebuild the base. Ethan noticed a change in them. Sarah stopped complaining about the drills. Thara began to listen before speaking. Even quiet, silver-skinned Lyrians started taking the initiative during simulations. They were growing, not just in skill but in trust. One evening, as the suns dipped below the red dunes, Ethan and Valara stood outside, watching the horizon. The air shimmered with heat. "You've changed," Ethan said quietly. "You're not the same princess who arrived here." Valara smiled faintly. "And you're not the same commander who thought he could train 5 alien daughters like soldiers." He chuckled. "Touché." But before either could speak again, the ground trembled, a low vibration that grew stronger every second. Ethan snapped his head toward the sky. Incoming. Above them, a small black craft pierced through the clouds, trailing smoke. It wasn't attacking, it was crashing. They ran to the impact site, weapons ready. When the dust settled, Ethan froze. Inside the wrecked pod was a single alien, badly wounded but alive. His armor bore the same strange symbol Ethan had seen on the pirate ship. Ethan knelt beside him. "Who sent you?" The alien coughed, his voice rough. "You don't understand they're coming." "Who?" Ethan demanded. The alien's eyes flickered, then went still. His last words were faint. "The Emperor's secret must never awaken." Then he was gone. Back at the base, the princesses argued over his meaning. "What secret?" Thara asked. "Maybe he was delirious," Ceres offered. Valara shook her head. "No, he meant something. Something connected to us." Ethan uploaded the alien's armor data into the base AI. A holographic projection flickered to life, showing encrypted Dominion military files, ones only the royal family should have access to. How did he get this? Lyrian whispered. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Because someone in the Emperor's court gave it to him. The room went silent. If that was true, It meant the threat wasn't just from outside the Empire. It was inside it. That night, none of them slept. Violara paced the command room, her thoughts dark. You think one of Father's generals betrayed us? Ethan nodded slowly. Someone powerful enough to control intelligence routes and hide ship movements. Whoever it is, they wanted you gone before you learned the truth. The truth about what? Saris asked quietly. Ethan looked at her. That's what we're going to find out. He turned toward the console and began plotting a new course. Pack what you need. We're leaving this planet. Violara frowned. Leaving? To where? Your home system. Ethan said, if there's a secret buried in your father's empire, we'll dig it out from the inside. The next morning, their transport lifted off the red sands of Varen Prime. As the stars filled the viewport, Ethan looked at the 5 princesses, no longer spoiled royalty, but warriors ready for something greater. He didn't know what waited for them in the Emperor's world, but his instincts told him this was only the beginning. And deep within the Dominion, far beyond their reach, a cloaked figure watched the transmission from Varen Prime. He smiled coldly. So, they survived. Perfect. Let them come home. The game is about to begin. The ship drifted through the darkness of space, silent except for the hum of its engines. Commander Ethan Ward stood near the observation window, watching the stars streak by. The royal daughters of Emperor Kaler sat behind him, whispering in nervous tones. They were going home, but this time not as pampered heirs. They were returning as survivors of an attack and bearers of a mystery that could shake an empire. Violara stepped forward, her reflection shimmering in the glass. Ethan, she said softly, my father will demand answers. He won't like hearing that someone inside the Dominion tried to kill us. Ethan crossed his arms. Then he should prepare himself. Because I'm not here to protect anyone's pride. I'm here to stop another war. For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, the twin suns of Kaler's home system appeared, bright, golden, and beautiful. But beneath their light waited shadows deeper than space itself. When the ship entered the Imperial hangar, rows of royal guards lined up in perfect formation. The landing bay gleamed like a palace of steel, banners hanging from towering walls. Ethan stepped out first, scanning every face, every weapon. The air smelled of ozone and polished metal. Then came Violara and her sisters, wearing light ceremonial armor instead of the lavish robes they once loved. A massive figure approached them, Emperor Kaler himself. His silver armor glowed under the lights, and his 4 golden eyes studied Ethan with calm power. My daughters, Kaler said in a deep voice that carried through the entire hall. You return soon and expected, and not in peace. Violara bowed. Father, someone tried to assassinate us. We were attacked on Varen Prime. A murmur rippled through the soldiers. Kaler raised a hand for silence. Who would dare such a thing? Ethan stepped forward. That's what we intend to find out, Your Majesty. But we found evidence that the attack wasn't random. The pirates had access to Dominion military codes. Someone inside your court betrayed you. The Emperor's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. You make a dangerous claim, human. I don't make claims, Ethan said calmly. I deal in facts. For a long moment, silence filled the hall. Then Kaler nodded slowly. Very well, Commander. You and my daughters will stay in the royal sector. You may investigate, but you will answer to me. Ethan inclined his head. That's all I ask. Later that night, in their assigned chambers, the princesses gathered around a holographic table. Ethan spread the stolen data across the display. Maps, coded signals, ship logs. Saris frowned. So all this came from one symbol? That mark on the pirate's armor? Yes, Ethan said. It's not just a logo. It's an encryption tag used by the Emperor's Shadow Division. Thara leaned forward. That's impossible. The Shadow Division was disbanded generations ago. Lyrian shook her head. Maybe officially, but someone brought it back. Violara's expression grew grim. And if the Shadow Division still exists, then they're working outside Father's control. Ethan pointed to one glowing symbol on the map. This signal originated from deep under the palace itself, from the old war vaults. Saris blinked. That's beneath the throne chamber. Yes, Ethan said. And that's where we're going. The next night, under the cover of darkness, Ethan and the princesses descended into forgotten tunnels below the palace. Dust drifted in the air like ash, and their lights cut through webs of ancient metal. They passed sealed doors marked with warning sigils. The deeper they went, the colder it grew. Lyrian whispered, "I didn't even know this place existed." "That's the point," Ethan replied. "Someone wanted it forgotten." At the end of the corridor, they found a massive vault door, half buried in rubble. Ethan crouched beside it and used his wrist device to override the lock. The door groaned, then slid open. Inside was a room filled with stasis pods, dozens of them humming faintly. Within each, an alien soldier slept, encased in shimmering blue light. Valara gasped. "These are from the First Dominion War thousands of years ago." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Not soldiers. Clones. Look, they all share the same face." The princesses stared in shock. Every pod contained an identical being, tall, armored, and coldly beautiful. The Shadow Division wasn't destroyed, Ethan said quietly. It was frozen, and someone's been waking them up. Suddenly, a metallic sound echoed through the chamber. "Someone's here," Valara hissed. Ethan turned, too late. A cloaked figure stepped out of the shadows, holding a plasma blade that hummed with dark energy. "You shouldn't have come here," the voice said, smooth and deadly. Ethan raised his weapon. "And who are you supposed to be?" The figure pulled back the hood, revealing the face of one of the Emperor's high generals. "I am General Kryn," he said coldly. "The Emperor's will and your executioner." Before Ethan could react, Kryn pressed a command on his wrist, and the stasis pods began to open. One by one, the ancient soldier's eyes flickered to life, glowing with an eerie blue light. Ethan backed up slowly, aiming his blaster. "Valara," he said, voice steady. "Get your sisters out. Now!" But Valara shook her head, her eyes blazing. "Not without you." The first of the awakened warriors stepped forward, energy blades igniting in perfect unison. And in that moment, Ethan realized they hadn't uncovered a secret. They had awakened an army. The sound of alarms blared through the underground vaults, red lights flashing across the metallic walls. Ethan's pulse raced as dozens of stasis pods hissed open, releasing cold vapor that crawled across the floor like fog. Inside, tall armored figures stepped out, each identical, their glowing eyes locking onto the intruders. "Move!" Ethan barked. Valara grabbed her sister Lyrian's arm, pulling her behind cover as a plasma bolt scorched the ground beside them. The heat singed her sleeve, the smell of burned metal filling the air. General Kryn stood before the newly awakened soldiers, his cloak flowing like liquid shadow. "You have no place here, human," he said, voice steady. "The Shadow Division was created to protect the Emperor's bloodline. You are a threat to that order." Ethan crouched behind a broken pod, eyes darting between Kryn and the soldiers. "Protect the Emperor?" he said, gripping his blaster. "You mean control him?" Kryn smirked. "You don't understand our purpose. These warriors were built to ensure the Dominion never falls again, even if it means rewriting history." The clones began marching forward, their synchronized steps echoing like thunder. Energy blades hummed to life in perfect unison, casting blue light over the dark chamber. Valara leaned close to Ethan. "We're surrounded." "Not yet," he muttered, pressing a button on his wrist device. The holographic map flickered on. An old maintenance tunnel ran beneath the chamber. "There's a way out." "But it's sealed," Sarah said, panic in her voice. "Then we'll unseal it." Ethan popped open a floor panel and started cutting through the metal. The hum of his plasma cutter was drowned out by the growing roar of advancing soldiers. Kryn raised his hand. "End them." The soldiers charged. Ethan fired, hitting the first clone square in the chest. It staggered but didn't fall. "Armored plating," he grunted. Valara joined him, grabbing a fallen blaster. "Then we aim for the gaps." Her shot hit the soldier's neck joint, and the body collapsed with a crash of metal. The others pressed forward, relentless and silent. The chamber filled with the chaos of combat. Bolts of plasma, shattering glass, and the sharp clang of metal on stone. Thra, the youngest sister, screamed as one of the clones lunged at her, but Ethan tackled aside, his blade slicing through its armor. "Go!" he shouted. "Down the tunnel!" The metal floor finally gave way, revealing a narrow shaft below. One by one, the princesses slid down into the darkness. Ethan turned back just in time to see Kryn raise his arm again, energy crackling around his wrist. "I expected more from the so-called human hero," the general taunted. "Then you're about to be disappointed," Ethan snapped, and threw an explosive charge. The blast ripped through the chamber, light and sound exploding in every direction. Dust and smoke filled the air. Ethan dove into the shaft and pulled the hatch closed behind him, sealing off the tunnel. He could still hear Kryn's voice echoing faintly through the walls. "You can't hide forever, Commander. The Emperor will know the truth soon enough." They slid for what felt like minutes before landing in a cavern lit by glowing moss. The air was damp and heavy, but it was quiet. No footsteps, no alarms. Violara stood up, brushing dirt from her armor. "You saved us again," she said softly. Ethan sighed. "Don't thank me yet. They'll track us. We need to reach the surface." Lyrian examined the walls, which shimmered faintly with embedded crystals. "These tunnels are ancient," she whispered. "They predate the Empire itself." Ethan knelt, brushing away dust from a carved sigil. It looked familiar, a spiral with 3 wings. "I've seen this before," he murmured. "It's not Dominion. It's Terran." Violara frowned. "Human?" "Yeah," Ethan said, "from before the wars." They followed the tunnel deeper until they reached a large, circular room. At its center stood an ancient console, glowing weakly with blue light. Ethan approached carefully, brushing off centuries of dust. The screen flickered to life, and lines of old Earth text scrolled across it. "Project Aegis, Final Phase Genetic Convergence." Ethan's stomach dropped. "No way." Violara stepped closer. "What is it?" He stared at the display, reading faster. "This wasn't built by your people. It was human tech, early human military science. The Dominion didn't create the Shadow Division." Saris blinked. "Then who did?" Ethan's voice was low, grim. "We did." Silence filled the chamber. The realization hit them like a physical blow. The Dominion Secret Army, the clones, the entire project, was born from human war experiments, not alien design. Somehow, long ago, those experiments had been stolen or rediscovered by the Dominion and turned into their darkest weapon. Violara whispered. "Then the betrayal, it began before any of us were born." Ethan nodded slowly. "And if Kryn knows this, he's not just protecting the Emperor. He's trying to rewrite the past." Before they could react, the console buzzed again and a hologram appeared. It was an old man in a Terran uniform, his face flickering with static. "If you're seeing this," the recording said, "Project Aegis has failed. The clones have rebelled. Do not awaken them. Destroy the facility before it's too late." The hologram froze, then vanished. Thara shivered. "Too late," she whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened. "We need to warn the Emperor. He has no idea what's buried under his throne." Violara looked at him with determination. "Then let's go. Together." Ethan met her gaze. Despite the chaos and fear, there was something new in her eyes, a spark of trust. "Right," he said. "We move at dawn." As the group rested in the dim light, far above them the palace trembled with movement. General Kryn stood in the vault, surrounded by awakened soldiers. He watched the pods open one after another and smiled coldly. "The old order is over," he said quietly. "It's time for a new empire." And as the shadows deepened, the army of the past took its first steps toward a future drenched in fire. The palace shimmered under the twin suns, its silver spires reflecting blinding light into the cloudless sky. From a distance, it looked peaceful, but inside, tension was spreading like wildfire. The imperial throne room, once filled with songs and laughter, was now cold and silent. Guards lined the walls, their armor gleaming but their eyes uncertain. Something had changed since the daughter's disappearance. Emperor Kaler sat upon his obsidian throne, his golden robes draped around him like molten sunlight. His face, usually calm, carried the weight of sleepless nights. Still no word from the training facility? He asked. The commander before him hesitated. None, Your Majesty. We've sent search units, but they haven't returned. Kaler's hands tightened on the armrests. Find them. My daughters and the human must be alive. Before the commander could respond, the great doors burst open. A gust of wind swept through, scattering loose scrolls across the floor. And there they were, Ethan and the Emperor's 4 daughters, stepping into hall covered in dust and dirt, but alive. The guards raised their weapons instantly, but Kaler stood and shouted, "Lower them." The Emperor's eyes softened as his daughters ran forward, kneeling before him. "Father!" cried Valara. "We made it back." Kaler rushed down the steps, embracing them all. Relief flooded his face. "Thank the stars, you're safe." Ethan stood a few steps behind, exhausted and bruised, watching quietly. Kaler turned toward him. "And you, human, you brought them home. I owe you a debt I can never repay." Ethan gave a weary nod. "There's something you need to hear, Your Majesty. Something about your general." Kaler frowned. "Kryn." Ethan nodded grimly. "He's leading a secret army beneath your capital. An army built from human technology. They call it Project Aegis." The throne room went silent. Even the guards froze. Kaler's expression darkened. That name should not exist. Valara stepped forward. "It's real, Father. We saw it. He's awakening soldiers who were made centuries ago, hybrids of human and Dominion design." The Emperor's voice was barely above a whisper. "Impossible." Ethan shook his head. "We found the proof. They were created to protect the royal bloodline. But Kryn twisted the mission. He's planning something far worse." Kaler turned away, pacing slowly. "Kryn has served me for decades. He saved this empire during the border wars. He would never betray you." Ethan interrupted softly. "Then you don't know him anymore." The room tensed. Guards shifted uneasily, but Kaler raised a hand to silence them. "Show me this proof," he said. Ethan handed him a hollow disc taken from the underground vault. Kaler pressed a button, and the image of the ancient human hologram flickered into view. "Project Aegis genetic convergence failed. Do not awaken the clones. They will not obey." The Emperor watched the old recording in silence. When it ended, his expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, he sank back onto his throne. "So it's true," he murmured. "Our greatest general has revived the ghost of a dead empire." Ethan stepped closer. "And he's going to use them to take your throne." For a long moment, Kaler said nothing. Then his voice turned to steel. "Then he will face justice." He turned to his daughters. "You have done more than I ever asked of you. But now, I must ask again, will you fight with me?" Valara's chin lifted. "Always." Lyrian and Saris nodded firmly. Even the youngest, Dara, straightened her shoulders. "We won't run anymore, Father." Ethan met Kaler's gaze. "If we don't move fast, he'll strike first." Kaler gave a sharp nod. "Then we strike tonight. I'll summon the Imperial Guard." Hours later, the palace courtyard roared to life with movement. Dozens of ships hummed as their engines warmed, banners snapping in the wind. Soldiers armed with plasma rifles stood in formation, awaiting command. Kaler stood at the front, dressed now in black ceremonial armor that gleamed under suns. His presence radiated power, but behind his eyes, worry still flickered. Ethan walked up beside him, checking his weapon. "You sure about this? Kryn won't go down quietly." Kaler glanced sideways. "No war ever does." From a command tower, Valara gave orders to the troops, her voice confident and strong. The daughters moved with precision, their training under Ethan showing clearly. For the first time, Kaler saw them not as children, but as warriors. "Father," Valara said over the comms. "All units ready." Kaler raised his hand. "Then let us reclaim our honor." The fleet lifted off, engines shaking the ground. Clouds parted as they soared into the open sky, heading toward the barren canyons outside the capital, where Kryn's base waited. Inside one of the transports, Ethan sat beside Valara. The hum of the engines filled the silence between them. "You're quiet," she said softly. "Just thinking," Ethan replied. Every time I try to help someone, it turns into a war. Valara gave a faint smile. Then maybe war follows you because you're meant to end it. He looked at her, surprised. That's a strange kind of compliment. She met his eyes, calm and steady. Maybe, but it's true. Their moment was broken by the pilot's voice. Approaching target zone. Multiple heat signatures below, defenses active. Ethan stood. Here we go again. Kaler's voice came through the radio. For the Dominion, for our people. As the ships descended, the sky erupted in streaks of red light, anti-air fire blazing from cliffs. The first wave of ships dodged and weaved, plasma bolts tearing past. The invasion of Kryn's stronghold had begun. Back underground, General Kryn watched from his command room, a cold smile on his face. "Fools," he said, "you walk willingly into my army's awakening." He turned toward rows of stasis pods glowing faintly. The first one cracked open and a tall, armored figure stepped out, eyes glowing an unnatural blue. Kryn raised his hand. "Rise, soldiers of Aegis. The age of humans and emperors ends tonight." The clones roared in unison, the sound shaking the walls. Far above, Ethan's dropship broke through the clouds, fire and lightning flashing around it. The final battle was coming. The twin suns were setting when the first explosions lit the horizon. The sky, once bright and golden, turned into a storm of fire and smoke. Ethan stood inside the dropship, holding a handrail as the ship shook violently. Around him, the Emperor's elite soldiers prepared for the landing, checking weapons, tightening armor straps, and whispering silent prayers. Below them, the canyon blazed with energy fire. Kryn's hidden base was no longer hidden. Plasma cannons rose from the ground like angry beasts, spitting blue light into the air. Valara's voice came through the comms. "Landing zone ahead. It's going to be rough." The pilot shouted, "Brace for impact." The dropship slammed down onto rocky ground. Dust and debris filled the air. The ramp opened, and Ethan was the first to jump out, rifle raised. "Go, go, go," he yelled. The soldiers poured out behind him, forming lines and firing toward the enemy turrets. The sound was deafening. Energy blasts, screaming engines, and the roar of war echoing off the canyon walls. Ethan spotted Kaler stepping down from another transport, his armor glinting in the fading light. Despite his age, the Emperor moved like a warrior born for battle. He wielded a long staff that glowed with golden light, a royal weapon that pulsed with power. "Forward," Kaler shouted. For the Dominion. The troops charged. As they advanced, more enemies poured from underground tunnels. Kryn soldiers. But they weren't normal soldiers. Their faces were pale, their eyes glowing blue, their movements too perfect. Ethan realized with a chill that these were the Aegis clones. "Don't let them flank you," he shouted. Aim for the chest. Energy cores are there. The battle turned brutal. Plasma bolts burned through the air, lighting up the dusk. Explosions shook the ground, throwing up fire and dust. Ethan rolled behind a rock, reloading his weapon as a clone lunged at him. The creature moved fast, too fast. Ethan barely dodged, firing at its chest. The clone staggered back, sparks bursting from its body before it collapsed. Valara landed beside him, her face streaked with dirt but her eyes fierce. "They're everywhere." "Yeah," Ethan said between breaths. "And they're not stopping." Behind them, the other daughters, Lyrian, Ceres, and Thera, led smaller squads, fighting like veterans. Their training with Ethan had transformed them completely. Kaler watched them from afar and felt a surge of pride. But his moment of admiration vanished when a massive explosion erupted near the cliff. The ground split open, revealing a huge steel gate beneath the rock. From the darkness, hundreds of glowing eyes appeared. Kryn's voice thundered from hidden speakers. "Welcome, Your Majesty. You brought the human too. Good. You'll both witness the birth of a new empire." The steel gate groaned open and rows of armored soldiers marched out, Aegis clones in full strength. Each one was identical, tall, powerful, and silent. Kayla's expression hardened. "Kryn, show yourself." Laughter echoed through the canyon. "I am everywhere, my emperor. You built your throne on human blood, and now their creations will erase it. Ethan narrowed his eyes. He's lost his mind. No, Kaler said grimly. He's lost his honor. The clones charged. The battlefield turned into chaos again. Ethan fought side by side with Valara, covering her as she struck enemies with her twin plasma blades. The other sisters joined them, fighting in a perfect rhythm. Still, the clones kept coming. For every one they destroyed, 3 more appeared. Kaler summoned the full power of his staff, slamming it into the ground. A shockwave of golden energy burst outward, throwing back dozens of clones. His armor blazed like a miniature sun. Ethan stared, awed. "Remind me never to fight you," he muttered. Valara smiled briefly. "You might have to," he's stubborn. As the battle raged, Ethan noticed something strange. Some of the clones weren't attacking. They hesitated, clutching their heads, as if something inside them was fighting back. "Wait!" Ethan shouted. "They're not all under control." Kaler looked around, confusion flashing in his eyes. "What do you mean?" Ethan ducked a plasma bolt. Kryn said they were built with human DNA. Maybe they still remember something human. Valara's gaze sharpened. "Then we can reach them." Before Kaler could stop her, she sprinted into the open, deactivating her weapons. "Stop," she yelled to the nearest group of clones. "You don't have to fight us. You're being used." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then one of the clones stepped forward, trembling. "We are not free." Ethan ran to her side. "Then help us stop him. Help us destroy the control network." The clone nodded slowly. Deep inside the command core, Kryn controls all from there. Kaler raised his staff. "Then that's our target." The Emperor's army regrouped, moving toward the massive metal door leading underground. As they advanced, Kryn's laughter echoed again, colder than before. "You can't stop what's already begun," his voice said. "The Aegis were never meant to protect you. They were designed to replace you." The doors exploded open. Inside the base, red warning lights flashed along endless corridors of steel. Rows of empty pods lined the walls, evidence of how many clones had already awakened. Ethan, Kaler, and the princesses pushed forward through waves of enemies, heading toward the command core. The deeper they went, the hotter the air grew, filled with the sound of humming machines. Finally, they reached a vast chamber glowing with blue light. In its center stood Kryn, half man, half machine, his body fused with cables and armor. "Welcome," he said. "You're just in time to witness perfection." Kaler stepped forward, fury in his voice. "You defiled everything we built." Kryn smiled coldly. "I improved it." Ethan raised his weapon. "Then let's see how perfect you are when you bleed." The battle for the command core began. Energy blasts ripped through the chamber, sparks flying in every direction. Kryn moved faster than any normal being, blocking every attack with mechanical precision. But Kaler was relentless. His staff struck with the force of thunder, each blow shaking the floor. Ethan dodged between them, firing at exposed circuits, trying to weaken Kryn's armor. Valara and her sisters joined in, combining their power into one synchronized strike. The chamber's lights flickered under pressure. Finally, Kryn staggered, sparks bursting from his chest. Ethan aimed one final shot at the core and fired. The explosion threw everyone to the ground. The lights went dark. When the smoke cleared, Kryn was gone, his body disintegrated into ash. The clones outside suddenly froze, their blue eyes dimming. The war was over. Ethan sat on the ground, breathing hard. "Please tell me that's it." Kaler looked down at the ruins of the command core. "It's over," he said quietly. "But peace comes with price." When the smoke cleared, the battlefield was silent. The sound of gunfire had faded, and only the wind whispered through the canyon. The suns were rising again, bathing the world in soft golden light. Ethan stood among the ruins of Kryn's base, looking around at what was left. Bodies of broken machines and fallen soldiers lay scattered across the ground. The air smelled of metal smoke and ash. Valara walked beside him. Her armor cracked and her face streaked with dirt. She looked exhausted but alive. Her sisters were helping the wounded, moving carefully through the debris. Kaler, the Emperor, stood on a high rock, staring down at the valley below. His long cloak fluttered in the warm breeze. He looked older now, his shoulders heavy, his eyes distant. Ethan approached him quietly. "It's over," he said. "Kryn's gone. The clones, they've stopped fighting." Kaler nodded slowly. "Yes, but what remains of them still lives. They were never meant to exist, yet they're alive now. That makes them my responsibility." Ethan followed his gaze. Across the canyon, dozens of clones stood in silence. Without Kryn's control, they looked lost, uncertain. Some of them stared at their hands, as if seeing them for the first time. Others looked at the sky, their glowing eyes dimming to a softer hue. Violara joined them. "They're not machines anymore," she said softly. "They're people, just like us." Kaler's face softened. "Then we will treat them as such." He turned to Ethan. "You gave them that chance. You reminded them of what it means to choose, to be more than what they were made for." Ethan smiled faintly. "Guess I've been teaching more than I realized." For a moment, silence settled over them. The suns climbed higher, lighting the valley with warmth and clarity. It was the first truly peaceful morning in a long time. Then the Emperor turned back toward the wreck base. "We will rebuild," he said, "but this time not as conquerors, as guardians." The clones began to help the soldiers gather supplies, working together in strange harmony. It was a sight Ethan would never forget. Former enemies standing side by side, rebuilding what they had destroyed. Later, in the great hall of the Imperial Palace, the victory ceremony began. The daughters of the Emperor stood before the grand throne, wearing ceremonial armor polished to a shine. The hall was filled with citizens, soldiers, and alien leaders from across the Dominion. Kaler rose from his throne and raised his staff. "This victory was not mine," he said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "It belongs to those who fought with courage, those who defied fear, and those who remember what it means to protect life, not destroy it." He looked directly at Ethan. "And to the human who taught my daughters the meaning of discipline, compassion, and strength, Ethan Cole, you have my eternal respect." The hall erupted in applause. Ethan shifted awkwardly and used to such attention. He gave a small nod, a humble smile tugging at his lips. Violara stepped forward. "Father, without him, we would not have survived. He showed us that honor isn't about power. It's about doing what's right, even when no one is watching." Kaler smiled proudly at her. "Then he has taught you well." He turned back to Ethan. "You once came here as a teacher. Now, I offer you a place among us, as the first advisor to the Imperial Guard." Ethan blinked, surprised. "You mean me? Living here? Permanently?" Violara chuckled softly. "Looks like you're not getting away that easily." The crowd laughed, and for the first time in months, Ethan felt the weight of war lift from his shoulders. He looked at the Emperor and then at the daughters he had trained, fought beside, and nearly died for. He nodded. "All right, I'll stay. But only if you promise one thing. No more secret wars. No more crazy experiments." Kaler placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have my word." Weeks later, peace had truly begun to take root. The once ruined training grounds were alive again, filled not only with royal soldiers, but also with reformed clones. They trained side by side, learning trust, discipline, and balance. Ethan walked among them, watching proudly as the new recruits sparred under suns. Violara walked beside him, holding a datapad filled with reports. "Never thought I'd see the day," Ethan said. Violara smiled. "You made it happen." He shook his head. "We all did." She looked at him for a long moment. "You've changed this world, Ethan." He looked back at her and smiled. "Maybe it changed me, too." A soft breeze passed between them, carrying the scent of alien flowers blooming nearby. The sky was clear, bright, and full of light. For the first time since he arrived on this strange planet, Ethan felt at home. That evening, as the twin sun sank behind the mountains, Kaler watched from his balcony. His empire had survived, but more importantly, it had evolved. His daughters were no longer just princesses. They were leaders. His soldiers were no longer machines of war. They were defenders of peace. And his human ally, Ethan, had become a symbol of unity between species. Kaler smiled quietly. Sometimes, he murmured, fate chooses the most unexpected teachers. The wind carried his words into the night as the stars began to shine. Two worlds, once divided, now stand together under the same sky.